7 o'clock, we're going to get started. To start, I'd ask everyone to rise and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, please, calling the meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone, to the 2023 school meeting and town meeting to follow. As in years past, I'm going to just zip through some rules. It's a small crowd tonight, given the weather and what we're going to discuss, but I'll still read the rules that I typically read. So the rules are that I propose are, when you are recognized, state your name. I think we all know each other, but at least first time through, state your name. All comments and questions should be addressed through the moderator. I will recognize one speaker at a time. Please be courteous when speaking and do not address any comments to other individuals directly. I'm going to be pretty lax with that tonight, as long as everything's, courteous. I don't think we have to worry about that too much. Speakers, anything you want to say, confine it to 2 minutes. You'll get a chance to speak again if necessary, but confine your comments to 2 minutes. And speakers should only speak to the topic on the floor and should not discuss other issues. Non-residents, which I don't think there are any, but if they are, they should be seated in the back. If there are any proposed amendments other than to a budget, please put those in writing. And if you have a secret ballot, you need to have it in writing and signed by 5 voters. I believe we won't have that tonight, but you never know. Once an article or item is voted on, there will be no further discussion unless new information is revealed. A motion to call the question should only be made after all sides have had an opportunity to state their position and requires a 2/3 vote. Each article requires a motion and a second for discussion, as does each amendment. For a motion and a second, the secretary or clerk needs to have the names for the minutes, and that's per RSA 91A. Procedurally, I'll read the warrant and then ask for a motion and a second to open the warrant for discussion. If there is discussion, I will then read the warrant again. If there's significant discussion, I'll read the warrant again and ask if you all are in favor of it. If there's no discussion, then we'll just vote on it. You can overrule any of these votes, but that's what I propose. Does anyone have a problem with any of those rules? Okay, so I'm going to start with the reading of the election results for the school board. For the school board, the votes were, for the school board, Curtis Coleman won the school board with 39 votes. School board clerk Ann Merrow won with 40 votes. School board treasurer Ann Merrow won with 38 votes. There were no other votes cast for the school board. So I'm turning now to page 81 in the town report. And I'm going to read from Article 5 and ask for a motion and a second for that. Article 5 is an appropriate sum of $1,715,520 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for school district officials and agents, and for the payment of the statutory obligations of the district, with $28,480 offsetting this amount from various grants. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. Do I have a motion for that? Kathy Golding makes a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Kelly Robitel. Before we open it for discussion, I think it would be appropriate for the folks at this table just to introduce themselves, and then I'll recognize any one of them first and then put it out to you all for vote.
Dan Bianchino.
Tim Sorgi. Curtis Coleman.
Kevin Richards, Superintendent.
Tim, do you want to speak to this first, or do you want to?
I'll defer to the superintendent to speak on the budget.
Okay.
Much more intimate knowledge of it. If there's any questions.
Sounds good.
Gives me the tough questions and he takes the easy ones. If you would, we'll just start on page 83. So the town of Albany obviously does not have a school at this time. So there are tuition agreements for elementary, middle, and high school with the town of Conway. So the top numbers, and if you have questions on the far left-hand side, there are numbers starting with number 1 down. So if you could refer to those lines, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. Lines 1 through 9, those are all related to your tuition agreements with the town of Conway. You will see the top part is elementary, middle, and high school. So that's your operational costs that you pay per student to the town of Conway. The next section down is the bonds that are out there for the high school, middle school, and elementary school. And the high school, next year's budget will be the last year to have any of the bond payments in there. The bottom, you will see by obligation and agreement, there is a tuition trust fund for the elementary, middle, and in high school. And that goes for any capital improvements that are in there. Lines 10 through down to 15, those are all special education costs. So we take a look at what the special education population is for the town of Albany, and we base our needs on individual IEPs. So if a student has specific needs, we budget those accordingly. So you'll see some pieces, and that will change from year to year. And an example is if you go to line 12, special education tuition. So what is covered with that? Remember, if you have a student who has a disability between the ages of 3 and now 22, you're responsible for providing those services. So sometimes a child that's 3 or 4 years old will, part of their IEP is to get services through a placement in one of the local preschools. Otherwise, if we have a student who can't be educated in the regular public school, we'll send them out of district if there's specific needs for that. And then also if a child requires a one-to-one aid, that would be in that line for special education tuition. So you can see that number kind of goes in and out depending upon if a child moves out or if they hadn't one-to-one aid last year, but they don't require one this year. It also goes to cover students who go to the charter schools in town as well. So if a child requires those special ed services, that's incumbent upon this particular budget. Same thing is true for psychological services on line 13. Speech services, doesn't look like there's a big need, but we keep that $100 as a placeholder in there. Occupational therapy or physical therapy services, that's on line 15. Again, these are budgeted based upon the needs written in the IEPs. Lines 16 through 22, those are your school board services. There are really no changes in there. The SAU office, that's for your support, part of the agreement that you do have for any of the services that come out of the SAU. The pupil transportation, the school district of Albany has an agreement with Eldridge Transportation, and that's set. That's a 5-year agreement, and we're going into year 2, 3, going into 3, I think. And that gets negotiated every 5 years. If you flip the page to page 84, you'll see, capital reserves. The only reserve fund that Albany School District has at this point is a special education trust fund. So there's at this time $141,000 in there. So that would cover any costs that you might not have had budgeted, some changes that did take place, and then the school board can have a public hearing and they can withdraw money to pay off those bills. And then the last part is we do have some grant money, federal grant money. That's to help offset some of the special education costs. So that's $28,000. Well, you'll see your budget is actually down about $12,000 over previous year.
Okay. So if anyone has any comments or questions, now would be the time to raise them. And if you do have a comment or question, please come up to the microphone so that Valley Vision can get you clearly on their services. Any questions, comments for the superintendent on the budget? Yes, Stan, hold on.
In the real world, did we get any state aid this year?
We did get some, Stan. Let me check the revenue piece here. It's not as much as you would like, but state adequacy was $501,000. It actually is a reduction over the previous year.
From state aid?
That's adequacy, correct. That comes from the state.
The adequacy, okay. The last time I saw it, it was zero in that box that we generally deduct the state aid from. Where's that box? We didn't get, as far as I know, we didn't get any state aid.
You do get adequacy money. You do.
Okay,
Yep.
you say so.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, I will ask then for Article 5 to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,715,520 for support of schools, for payment of salaries for school district officials and agents, and for payment of the statutory obligations of the district, with $28,480 offsetting this amount from various grants. Article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. All those in favor? All those opposed? Article 5 passes. Going on to Article 6, to see if the residents, and by the way, Article 6 is non-binding, to see if the residents of Albany are in favor of directing the Albany School Board to notify the Conway School District to terminate the K-6 tuition agreement that expires in June 2026. This would provide the 3-year notice as required in the existing tuition agreement with Conway. Again, this article is advisory only and is non-binding. Do I have a motion to bring it to the floor? Kathy Golding moves. Seconded? Johnny Eastman seconds. Does anyone up here want to address that in the initial event?
Yeah, so we had a subcommittee of the school board here look into the options for Albany for our K-6 students. For those of you who might not know, we had a 20-year agreement with Conway that will expire in 3 years. The K-6 agreement is 1 year ahead of the middle school and the high school agreements, not just for us, but for all the sending towns, except is Eaton, they're on the same schedule as us, right?
They're on the same schedule.
Okay. So we're looking at other options for the K-6. And one of the recommendations, as everybody knows, or the only recommendation, was to have the Albany kids attend Madison. That came about because Conway had failed to respond to our actions to engage them with contract talks to come up with an agreement, to talk about an agreement with them. So since this has become a public issue, Conway has since just very recently reached out to me, and they now have a subcommittee. So we will be discussing some talks with them. So I just want people to understand that no decision about where our K-6 students are going to attend school will be done for at least 2 years. This is not something we're discussing right now. We are simply looking to give Conway notice that we would like to opt out of the current agreement we have with them as it is written. And if anybody has read the contract, it is kind of a confusing document. And basically, it's not very advantageous to this town. It's not very advantageous to any town, but we're only concerned about Albany. So ideally, what we would like to do is sit down with Conway and work out a better agreement with them so our kids can stay attending the Conway schools. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions or comments about that. I'll leave that to you, Ed, or if Dan or Curtis have anything they want to add.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Rick, Leah, could you grab the microphone and bring it to Rick? He's up there. He's up there.
No, the way I see this, Warner, was to give the school board the opportunity to have something to negotiate with Conway.
Well, I don't know what you mean by something to negotiate with.
Well, the fact that you've done your homework, looking at alternatives. You're going to be able to go into this to be able to
Correct.
negotiate.
So yeah,
Right.
just the inverse of actually what you're saying is if we don't give Conway notice, they have no reason to even sit down with us. So this at least brings them to the table, which will allow us to hopefully construct a better deal than what we currently have.
Thank you. Any other questions?
And I would think, just, I don't want to say, I would think that the Conway School Board, I mean, there's been a couple outspoken people on it, but I would think in general sense, the teachers and the residents of Conway and the school board itself, they want to make this deal happen. They just haven't, it has not been a priority to them at all. So this is, just gives us the outlet to make it a priority. So we have the next few years to get it done. You know, and that's all really it is. So
Yeah.
been a lot of things written about it that just was kind of nonsense. This is just us, you know, doing what we're supposed to be doing for the taxpayers of town. And that's really it.
Yeah, I was not happy the way that the newspaper crafted the teletalk question. They basically said, what do you think about Albany sending their kids to Madison? I was livid because I said, that's not even something we have even discussed. That's a decision that'll be done 2 years down the road. But they do seek the truth and print it, according to them. I just don't think they saw too much of it that particular day, but is what it is. I responded just to try to put things in perspective, and I think people here have an understanding of what we're trying to do.
Didn't you have hair in the cartoon?
I did. I was grateful for that.
Yeah.
Very grateful for that, yes.
So Tim, I have one question for you all. So this is K through 6. Is there
Correct.
another contract that's going to need to be potentially renegotiated for 7th through 12th down the line?
Yes, so there's a separate group of all the sending towns for the high school that is meeting during this time period. We've met twice already. We figured as a group of sending towns, we would have a little bit more power negotiating with Conway, but that only pertains to 9 through 12. 7 and 8 would be a contract that we would have to sit down and negotiate with Conway. They have expressed that they want all their contracts to be the same, the way they are now. So whatever we would come out of the high school deal with would most likely apply to the middle school as well. Middle school and the high school are on the same time schedule. So all that stuff will start next year. I can't wait.
Any other comments, questions? Yes. Yes, thank you.
I was just wondering, you said that the current contract isn't very advantageous for us. I know it's probably really premature, but could you say like anything specific about like what's not advantageous for us, or what you might want to negotiate specifically with the contract?
I don't think we have enough time, but
Fair.
basically we're paying for a lot of things that we shouldn't be paying for. I believe a tuition agreement should be 1.5 to 2 pages long. It should be heavily geared on the number of children that you send to the school. There's a lot of peripheral charges in the contract that add to our cost. For example, if you look at the school budget this year, our attendance, our ADM, the number of kids we send to Conway, went up 2 students in K-6. Our budget increased $200,000. That does not mean we're paying $100,000 per student, but the way the contract is constructed, that's how the numbers happen to work out. Now, Kevin, I believe you say in middle school there were less children, or in high school there were less?
Yeah.
So we're paying less in those agreements.
Take me a second.
But they,
You actually have 1.67 more middle school students, but the high school, you have about 5 less students at high school.
right, and I think our tuition cost at the high school went down.
Yeah.
And a middle school probably went down as well. So they play off of each other with the numbers. So again, I don't want to be unfair to Conway. This is an agreement that the people back in the day signed on both sides of this. They're not charging us something that we didn't agree to. It's just that things have changed a little bit, and I feel we can get a better deal. And also, for anybody that has children with IEPs, because we will be staying with SAU 9, all our special ed services will still be provided by SAU 9. Those, if we were to leave Conway, that is something that we would stay. We're not leaving the SAU, so that would stay. There were some concerns when we talked about this before at the budget hearing.
Could someone just define what an IEP is?
Individualized education plan.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote on this, but again, it is a non-binding vote. The vote is to see if the residents of Albany are in favor of directing the Albany School Board to notify the Conway School District to terminate the K-6 tuition agreement that expires in June 2026. This would provide the 3-year notice as required in the existing tuition agreement with Conway. All those in favor? All those opposed? The non-binding Article 6 passes. Now we're on to Article 7, which is to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. Kathy Carrier. Kathy, could you just come up to the mic, please?
Article 1 was to elect a moderator. Was a moderator elected? That wasn't listed in the,
Sandy, I don't know if it wasn't on the ballot, so I don't even know if it was supposed to come up. Moderator generally comes up every other year, I think, but I don't see it, so
okay.
the answer to your question is no.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? So I just have one thing to say. I think most of you know that Superintendent Richard has announced his retirement. And when will your last day be?
Actually, it's June of 24.
One more.
Oh, forget about it.
Another year.
He'll be here next year. Never mind.
Same time next year.
All right. Fair enough. No. Anyway, anybody have any comments at all on anything? Okay, with that, then I will close the school meeting, and we'll just take a couple minutes to change seats, and we'll go right into the town meeting.